You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javanokelo, live from Seattle, Washington, USA.
Thank you so much for joining me for another amazing session of the Daily African Proverbs. And today our session takes us to Cameroon. We are going to discuss an amazing proverb from Cameroon that says, "An elephant which kills a rat is not a hero." One moment, I was hearing some music in the background. Just bear with me for a moment. I want to make sure. Okay, excellent. There are so many buttons and so many pages to turn on and off when you are doing a live stream like the one we are doing today on YouTube, and we're also live streaming on Twitter Spaces. So thank you for being with us. I'm excited to be with the wonderful Gogo Rutendo Ngara, who is joining us from South Africa. She will share the exact location where she is, but she's a leader and a spiritual leader that I look up to, and also just a source of wisdom and knowledge that I really feel privileged that she joins us every Thursday. I also want to welcome Mala and my brother Joseph Kafunda. Mala is here in the US, Joseph is in Namibia, and I know we will be joined by a few other people for the session today. I would love to start our session by just giving you a moment, Gogo Rutendo Ngara, to share with us, how you're doing and where you are, what's exciting about your current location, and then share with us your perspective on today's proverb from Cameroon that says, "An elephant which kills a rat is not a hero." Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Simon, and thank you for being so persevering in bringing this African wisdom to the fore. I'm currently in South Africa in one of the 9 provinces, which is the Northwest Province of the country, and it borders with Botswana. And I'm very blessed that at the moment I'm completely surrounded by mountains and nature, and we're in summer now, so it's a lovely warm day, and I know that there are many mountain passes waiting for me to walk up. There's some streams and some rivers around where I am, and so that's where I find myself at the moment. So what does that have to do with the proverb? So African wisdom is not unilateral. I think we have ascertained that it is multidimensional. And by the same token, the bite-sized wisdoms that are carried in Proverbs are also multidimensional, and they're also layered with meaning. So this proverb, which says an elephant which kills a rat is not a hero, at first glance, we could say that this proverb speaks to size differentials. I mean, elephants are massive creatures. They're the largest living land animals on the planet. And a female African elephant can weigh up to 3,500 kgs or 3.5 tons, while her male counterpart can weigh in excess of 6,000 kgs, up to 7 tons. And in fact, the largest known elephant recorded, from Angola weighed about 11,000 kgs. So an average elephant has the weight of 5 or 6 horses. It has the weight of a delivery truck, or it has the weight of former US President Obama's official limousine, the Beast, Whereas a rat, on the other hand, the average female rat weighs about between 230 to 350 grams, and the average male rat weighs up to 450 grams. So an elephant is more than 1,600 times the weight of a rat. So there'd be an unfair match if a rat and an elephant would come face to face in a fight. It would take no effort at all for the elephant to kill the rat. The elephant would just have to step on it, and the sheer weight would crash its bones to smithereens. But there would be no honor in this. It would be an act of cowardice. The elephant would not be a hero. But let's deepen our understanding by using the African circumspect view. Elephants are herbivores. They are complete vegans. They eat an average of about 235 kgs of food per day, which is a combination of grass, of herbs, of fruits, of plants, and trees. And what they don't use for their own nourishment during the digestive process, and which is most of it, eventually provides up to 150 kg of dung daily. And this dung is rich in nutrients which are beneficial to the earth. It makes great manure because the compost is rich in nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium and calcium and magnesium and sodium, all of which are essential for plant growth. But there are actually more uses for dung. It has, the dung of the elephant, that is, it has very little bacteria in it. And this is because the elephants eat many medicinal plants. And these are naturally processed into usable form by their digestive process. And because of this, traditional healers or indigenous health practitioners here in Africa use elephant dung as part of their medicine bag. You know, when the dried dung is burnt, the smoke becomes a natural mosquito repellent. It can also be inhaled as a mild painkiller to cure headaches. It can stop nosebleeds. It can prevent sinus problems. And if there's a drought or if there are no water sources nearby and you're caught lacking in water and you find fresh dung, you can actually drink it, and use the water for hydration. But more than that, elephant dung can be used and ground up as coffee. It's got a fragrant taste, and it can also make paper, eco-friendly paper, natural paper, because it has a similar fiber to that of wood pulp. And just because 150 kgs of dung, by one elephant a day is enough to use to fill holes in ditches, and it also has a wonderful sieving quality. So if this elephant that is a natural vegan suddenly starts eating meat, such as a rat, say it kills it because it wants to eat it, it would destroy both its medicinal and composting value of the dung. As we know, you cannot use the dung of a carnivorous animal for manure because it contains many parasites and pathogens that become harmful and disease-inducing. So if the elephant was suddenly to kill the rat for food, which might be the excuse, this would actually render it as being destructive to the environment. It would not be used for its ecological cycle of life. So there'd be no honor in this. It would be an act of cowardice. The elephant would be no hero. Now, despite their large size and weight, elephants are very, very nimble. They can run up to 65 kilometers per hour. I mean, that is 40 miles per hour, despite that size. They're incredibly light on their feet. And unless they happen to be passing through bushes and trees and you hear the crackling, their footsteps are completely silent. You don't hear elephants pass you by, despite being 6,000 kgs. An elephant can walk straight past you without you hearing it. They tread nimbly on the tips of their toes, and the fatty connective tissue in their feet acts as a shock absorber for their weight and also a sound buffer or a sound smotherer, of potential location giveaways such as crackling twigs. And so they're easily able to avoid a rat that may cross their path or potentially get in their way because they're actually very nimble despite their large size. Elephants also hear through their feet. They listen through their feet, which are incredibly sensitive. They're able to hear both the externalized trumpeting of elephants far away or the seismic vibrations, which are at frequencies that humans cannot hear, of other elephants more than 20 kilometers away through their feet. Their feet are communication devices. So why would this intricate technology of an elephant foot be used to kill a rat? When it has so many other functions that are beneficial both for survival and regeneration? There would be no honor in it. It would be an act of cowardice. The elephant would be no hero. But apart from its feet, an elephant's trunk is also evolutionary brilliance. The trunk has more than 40,000 muscles in it. 40,000 muscles compared to the human who has about 650 muscles, and this trunk is versatile. It can be used as a snorkel. It can be used as a hose. It can be used as a straw. It can be used to forage for food as a hand. It can be an arm to throw things at small annoyances like humans who are in the wrong place at the wrong time doing the wrong thing, like hunting. which makes them very mad. You know, the trunk is dexterous and gentle enough to act as a finger or to scratch an itch or to rub the eye, you know. And it is also used for greeting other elephants. You know, they also greet and they interlock their trunks as a form of communication. So this trunk can be used to gently move a rat out of its way if a rat happens to come in its way, rather than kill it, you know. So if it were to kill it, there'd be no honor in it. It would be an act of cowardice. The elephant would be no hero. Elephants remember everything. They are keepers of memory. There's nothing they forget. They are matriarchs and the feminine rules. They are community and communal beings. They follow the way of the mother. They follow the way of Oset, of Nom Kubulwane, of Yemenja, you know. But woe betide as the mother, as the nature's mother, as the mother of the jungle. Woe betide anyone who upsets the course of nature and gets in an elephant way. An angry elephant no one wants to meet. It will throw both its weight and its muscle and its dexterity around, and you'd simply have no chance. So, but these incredible social animals, you know, who exist in matriarchal form, you know, who take care of each other. I mean, elephants will surround cubs at night to ensure that they're, you know, or the calves rather, to ensure that they are not in danger from predators such as lions or cheetahs or leopards, etc. You know, and they move together with the feminine and they protect each other and they take care of each other. And there's so much to learn from this matriarchal feminine form of nature. But they're highly becoming endangered because of human greed. Why? Because largely for the tusks, you know, for ivory. So why are we killing, you know, this fantastic creature? But what about rats? You know, rats also have a place under the sun. They're often associated as vectors of disease and pestilence. But I think coronavirus is showing us that humans are also vectors of disease and pestilence. You know, we pass it from one to the other. Like elephants, rats are social. Rats take care of the injured, they take care of the sick in their group. And without companionship, they tend to become lonely and depressed. And like elephants, they also have excellent memories. So when an elephant views a rat, it sees a distant relative because they are very similar in, you know, the ways that they engage with things. So rats, as rodents, actually serve a purpose in the ecosystem. They are scavengers and opportunistic eaters. They eat garbage and other things that we as humans throw away. They're also a part of the predatory system, you know, because owls, falcons, hawks, and other predatory animals feed on rats as well. So if we were to lose rats in the ecosystem, it would be detrimental to the whole system, to the lizards, to the reptiles, to the snakes, who all prefer to eat rats. Rats keep things in balance. And any infestation of these rodents normally points towards the infestation inherent in the behavior and waste of humans. So when they bring illness, it's a reflection of our collective negligence. Nature is all about form and function. There is no natural reason for an elephant to kill a rat, meaning such an act would break the laws of nature, would break the laws of nature, would break the laws of all that is. So what then is this proverb actually talking about? If we look at the elephant at the room, now, the proverb, to my interpretation, is speaking to inequality and abuse of power. Whether this is child abuse, whether it is gender-based violence, whether it is war, or whether it is structural issues such as discrimination, such as xenophobia, such as oppression, such as marginalization. This proverb speaks to senseless conflict. It speaks to the structural, cultural, and cognitive violences that are rife in the world today. This proverb also speaks to the de-evolution of humanity, where we believe that simply because the earth and all its creations do not speak a language that we as humans understand, or whether they do not extract or exploit on a large scale like we do, this gives us the right to dominion and control of that which actually sustained us. This is cowardice. There's no honor in it. And the power wielder is seldom a hero. So, what is a hero? Because the proverb tells us that an elephant that kills a rat is not a hero. And when we get to the source of the word hero, we then start to look at Heru, who is an archetypal energy, or an archetypal energy of the cosmos, which is depicted, in Kemetic or ancient Egyptian cosmology as Heru. Now, Heru is the bringer of things together, is the uniter. Heru is the one who unites Upper Kemet and Lower Kemet. And we see this if we look at the iconograph of Heru. Heru wears the red crown of Lower Kemet, but he also wears the white crown as well, of Upper Kemet. So he unifies, other things. Heru is the principle of circumspection. When we spoke about circumspection last week, this is deified as a personality called Heru in Kemet. Heru is the principle of will. Heru is the principle of leadership. Heru is the principle of freedom, of choice. Heru is the one who governs. He's the governor. He's the president. He's the chief. He's the one who ensures that the laws of nature or the laws of Ma'at are kept in balance. Because that's what a governor does. A governor is one who ensures that the natural laws are kept in balance. Heru, there's a whole metaphor about Heru, how Heru is born of immaculate conception between his mother Oset, who's able to fashion a phallus that was not there, of the father who was chopped up into 14 pieces, and becomes pregnant with him. And he then has to challenge his own uncle, who's rendered everything into the chaos we see in the world today. We see carnage, we see despots, we see inequality, we see war, we see conflicts, we see mayhem, all of this that we see, all the ills and the pestilences that we see in the world today, according to Kemetic cosmology, it is Heru who has to meet that and restore balance. And at first, Heru is naive, as the natural progression of things. And he's kind of arrogant. He's the son of Oser. He's the son of the king. He's the son of, of the divine, and this renders him blind when he meets his opponent, which is his uncle, which is the principle of chaos, which is Set. And his uncle is able to blind him, and it renders him blind. And it is only when the principle of wisdom, Tehuti, meets him, whispers to him his true essence and gives him back his eye, that he gains insight, and then he comes forth from night into day and becomes the awakened and enlightened leader, who then becomes the hero, Heru, who then becomes the hero. So a hero is an enlightened leader. And so what this proverb is talking to us about is, what does it take to be an enlightened leader? And if you are an elephant that is killing a rat, which also serves a part of the ecosystem, for no good reason, there's no way you can be a hero. So that would be my interpretation of the proverb today.
Wow, thank you. You really unpacked this proverb, and I was so taken away by the way you also unpacked the elephant, and the relationship between in this proverb, especially the relationship between the rat and the elephant, and also the nature that surrounds both of them and how important both of them are. And I want to just appreciate you for sharing those nuggets of wisdom with us. And I also want to welcome all our guests who are with us on Twitter Spaces, and also everyone who is with us on YouTube. This is a special edition of the Daily African Proverbs. This is the only edition that is held on Twitter Spaces. All our sessions are held on Clubhouse and YouTube. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for helping us, build a community that values African proverbs, African wisdom, and they hope that what we do every day with our time, especially at the beginning of the day, makes our ancestors smile and makes them proud that the work is continuing. So I want to continue the conversation with Gogo Rutendo Ngara here, and I want to welcome you who is listening to join us on stage, so that in 10 to 15 minutes you can also, just share your contribution. But I want us to now just relate this proverb with what's going on in Africa, particularly Cameroon. Over the last 2 years, I have been looking at the news and seeing that, the English-speaking part of Cameroon is actually being oppressed by the majority French-speaking part of Cameroon and the leadership in Cameroon. There has been a lot of violence. In fact, there are Cameroonians who are seeking refuge in Nigeria. As of last week, there were over 70,000 Cameroonian refugees who just recently arrived in Nigeria. So, these types of proverbs also, when they come from a given country, I like to look at what's going on in that country and just speak to it, but also reflect on what does African spirituality, perceive what's going on there. How can we go deeper and not just look at what's in the news, but what can we learn about what's going on from the perspective of African spirituality. And later on, we are going to talk about the perspective of Credo, Mutua, and I don't know, I just want to hear your perspective as well, because I feel that you always bring all of the pieces together in a really powerful way. So thank you. The microphone is yours. Yeah, Gogo Rutendo, I think you're muted at the moment. So whenever you can, just unmute. But I also just want to let everyone in the room know that you can actually share. If you go at the bottom of the screen, if you're on Twitter Spaces, there's that share button that you can use to share and bring in more people into the conversation. And if you tap the link at the top of the room, you will be able to see the tweet that has more details about this proverb, and also has the link to the YouTube live stream for you to join us there. I can't still hear Gogo Rutendo. I don't know what happened there. So I'll try and troubleshoot this. And I want to invite you, Mala, Joseph, and Hazel, whenever you can. Also feel free to join us on stage. I want to hear your perspectives as well. But if you're just joining us, this has been an amazing conversation here with Gogo Rutendo Ngara, who is originally from Zimbabwe, but she lives in South Africa. And I'm troubleshooting her audio here. I think it's better now. So just give me one moment. Okay, let's try now. Okay, Gogo Rutendo, carry on.
Can you hear me now?
I hear you perfectly.
Okay, wonderful. Technology always plays its tricks. When we see the violence and conflict happening across the African continent, or even, as we say, the conflict between the secessionist groups and the government troops in Cameroon, or the clashes between armed groups and security forces, or the attacks on schools, or the kidnappings, or the sexual assaults, or, all the violations against children and women and men alike, we need to ask ourselves, who is the elephant and who's the rat? And who is and if it's the elephant, is the elephant being true to matriarchal principles? Is it being true to conservation and protective principles? Or has it deviated from being an elephant and it's taking on other personalities? Or is it simply a rat which is giving the illusion of an elephant? Or is it an elephant which is behaving like a rat? And if it is an elephant that is behaving like a rat, what is the pestilence within us as humanity that it is reflecting? Because remember, rats are a reflection of our own wastes and negligence. That's when they bring pestilence, and that's when they breed, out of control. or what we conceive as out of control. So what, as I've said, is the senseless conflict? Because I said, this proverb speaks to senseless conflict. It speaks to the structural, cultural, and cognitive violences that are rife in the world today. So who is disempowered in this, and to what end? Who is the power wielder, and to what end? I believe that what is happening as it relates to African spirituality and this proverb speaks to the de-evolution of humanity. Speaks to us believing that we have dominion over others, speaks to us believing that we own parts of the world, we bound properties, we bound countries, we bound regions, we bound territories, and we have this notion of property rights and ownership of a land which owns us once again, of resources that are there serving us and that we are seeking to exploit as opposed to being in service of, in as much as they're in service of us. So we are then in dominion of that which sustains us. So I think when we look at what is happening, in the continent and in Cameroon, specifically, who is becoming the refugee? Is it the refugee? Is it the rat, or is it the elephant? Is the refugee? Is the elephant being a refugee to itself, or is it being a refugee in the face of the elephant? Is the rat becoming a refugee unto itself? When I say that, I mean moving away from its own natural principles and natural laws, or is it, becoming a refugee at the hand of the elephant? And to what end? And this is what African spirituality would start asking us to start unpacking. And then lastly, this proverb speaks to Heru, speaks to the hero. So what is it that needs to be activated in order to activate the hero or the Heru within the situation? So then it starts speaking about governance structures. In what ways are the governance structures, or the laws of man, and I say man, purposefully, what ways are the laws of man actually in harmony and alignment with the laws of nature, or the laws of the supreme, or the universal laws, the cosmic laws, and in what ways have we deviated from that in imprinting these particular laws? What is it that causes us, some principles, or some sections or some sector to want to deviate from those laws rather, and in deviating from those laws, create conflict and create wars? In what ways are we needing to create war in order to try and protect the truth? Because that's what the warrior archetype in our African spirituality does. It protects the truth. It brings protection. It brings immunity. And in what way is immunity compromised? And we see that with our current global pandemic, that collective immunity is compromised. And here we're talking about immunity, not just from a medical perspective, but we're also talking about immunity in terms of morality, immunity in terms of adhering to the indigenous principles, immunity in terms of how we relate to societal principles, how we relate to each other, immunity as it relates to how we relate to the other. We've spoken about Ubuntu before, and how Ubuntu is actually a pervasive force that runs through everything, through Muntu, through Bantu, through Kintu, through Kuntu, through Hantu, through time and space. How are time and space not being adhered to? So this proverb would tell us to analyze things from that perspective. You've spoken about how there's a definite othering between those who speak one colonial language, English, and those who speak another colonial language, meaning French. In what ways are we simply perpetuating the ways of the oppressors? And what is it that has died within the African psyche, that it tends to only use the ways of the colonial oppressors, or the ways of the deviant elephant, or the rat, which shows pestilence, as opposed to adhering to our own principles of Ubuntu or Ma'at or anything else that you may call it? In what ways do we need to look back to that which made us great and allowed us to live in harmony with each other and in harmony of the whole? How have we allowed boundaries that that are inherent in a language that is not indigenous to us, to disconnect us, because even though we're speaking in English today, in this platform, because that's become the most widely known language, on the planet, in what ways is it a disconnecting language, and in what ways has the languaging created war in the things we actually say and how we say it? What is the epistemology, what is the ontology that is framing the languaging that we use, and how does that create the conflict that we're seeing? So I think, and in what ways you've mentioned, it is between French speaking and English speaking. In what ways is the battle that's happening in Cameroon actually a battle that's taking place in Europe at the moment, between the European Union and for instance the UK, or whatever it is? So in what ways are we simply projecting by our actions, because we've lost inner agency within ourselves, and we've lost our rooting, and we've lost the knowledge of who we are as elephants, as mighty elephants, those who are able to listen with their feet, who are able to walk in silence even though they're massive, and who are able to hear through their feet 20 kilometers away? In what ways have we become deaf? In what ways have we become blind? And in what ways have we lost our sense of smelling what the situation actually is? So this is what African spirituality, I believe, would say about the situation. It would implore us to look deeper into the self. What is my individual action? How am I, Rutendo, who is here in South Africa, contributing to the conflict by my actions, the conflict here in Cameroon, by my inner conflicting behaviors or opinions within myself here? Because ultimately, all of this is connected by vibration, because we are called persons, we are of vibration, we are of sound. So whatever it is I do, we know from quantum physics that a flap of a wing, of a butterfly in Mexico can eventually, through chaos theory, create a tsunami in Japan. So simply, by the same token, our thoughts, our actions, and what we perpetuate creates a collective vibration that imprints, into the what we're seeing, on our continent, and in fact in the world at large. So yeah, that would be my take in terms of how we relate it into the situation today.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful, and I love how we have to go back and look deep into ourselves. That's where there is the answer. And also, I learned as you are speaking that there is so much. The way that the conflicts and the situation in Cameroon, and also it's a pattern in many parts of Africa. Even if we go back a few weeks ago, we talked about Ethiopia. It's a similar pattern there. So it's very much like our colonizers trained us to behave, or it's the divide and rule way, and even if you look at South Sudan, similar thing is happening. So I love how we are called upon to look deeper and take action once we really understand how our own actions are contributing to what we see. Thank you very much. Now I want us to go to the part of the segment where we are now going to relate what's going on in Cameroon and in Africa in general with what Credo Mutua would say about it. Last week you read an excerpt from his book for us. I don't know if you do that this week as well, but while you think about it, I just want to share with everyone who is here in the room with us for today's Daily African Proverbs that I am hosting the wonderful Gogo Rutendo Ngara, who is in South Africa. Earlier on at the beginning of the conversation, she shared with us, what was exciting about where she is at the moment. She's surrounded by mountains, and it's just a beautiful, site where she is. She also described to us earlier on her interpretation of this proverb. And she shared with us. I was actually very moved as you are describing the way the elephant walks and carries its weight, but it walks in a way that you don't even hear the elephant. It reminded me of a time where I actually encountered a big group of elephants. We went to one of these wildlife safaris, and it takes people sometimes days to even see one elephant. But here we were, the first evening, we were just taking a leisurely drive, and we see a lot of elephants. But the way they are walking, it's so majestic, it's so effortless. And I just appreciate how you described it in detail, and also shared the benefits of its manure and its impact to the environment. So we then went to the relationship between African spirituality, and how from an African spirituality perspective we could respond to what's going on in Cameroon. I was describing how over 75,000 Cameroonian refugees are in Nigeria as a result of the conflict between the Anglo-Cameroonian people and the Franco-Cameroonian people. And it's a conflict that has been going on for years because of marginalization. So research, learn more about it, and then let us know what you think in the comments once you do your research. But I'm really, really privileged that we are now going to relate this to what Credo Mutua. And Gogo Rutendo Ngara, I just want you to briefly share with our listeners who Credo Mutua is, and why his works and his teachings are valuable, especially to young Africans globally in this time. Thank you so much. I'll pass you the microphone.
Thank you so much, Simon. Well, Credo Mutwa was an incredible human being. In the West, people often revere Leonardo da Vinci as a polymath, because he was a master of many disciplines, whether it was medicine or architecture or art or whatever. And we had such a polymath here in Africa very recently, and he only passed away last year. And, this was Vusamazulu Credo Mutwa. And of course, let's break down his name. So Vusamazulu means the awakener of the Zulu people. Vusa is to awaken. But it can also mean the one who ignites enlightenment. And this was the name that was given to him. And he did this in a number of ways. And then Mutwa actually relates to the First Nations people. When we speak about our Bushmen, or the San, people, they're called Batwa. They're called, and so the Mutwas, are related to the First Nations peoples, our original ancestors, the ancestors who unite us all. Now, he was an incredible man. He was what we call a Sanusi, a high initiate, but he was an artist of multiple mediums. He sculpted, he painted, he wrote plays, he wrote musicals, he wrote poetry, he wrote books, and he actually painted, because he was a prophet and a seer. He actually painted on the walls of a village in Soweto here in South Africa, the first cultural village that he built. He painted a prediction or a prophecy of 9/11 on the walls. So if you go, and he painted that in 1979. So if you go, to Soweto, you'll see airplane moving into two towers. And at the time, when he did it, there were no highways or anything that you could have drawn that knowledge from. But, he's depicted the highways. He's depicted a futuristic life from the time that he was in 1979 in South Africa. He was, apart from being an artist, he was an incredible scholar. He was a philosopher. He was a cosmologist, and he was well known for advising, whether it was anthropologists or paleontologists or whoever it was that was really seeking to understand, many of our old wisdoms, or even to understand what is seeking to be understood in terms of modern education. He was a community builder. He was an activist. He was a healer. He was what we call a sangoma as well. So he was a healer, of multiple mediums. He was a teacher. He was a philosopher. He was many, 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 many things, and he was far ahead of his time. And so, because of this, he was actually misunderstood. And he had many predictions. People didn't like the predictions, so they chose to vilify him. They chose to marginalize him. They chose to throw him out as a sellout. And he actually had his house and burnt, during the 1976 riots against the language of apartheid by the youth in 1976 in South Africa. His wife was raped, he was beaten, and his family went through a great deal of struggle and strife, throughout his life. He passed away last year on the 25th of March, just a day before South Africa went into national lockdown because of the first lockdown because of coronavirus. And he had been predicting of a time like this for eons, and people had not taken him seriously. And when we look into his books, into his plays, into his sculptures, into his culture villages, you'll realize that he'd long been telling us about the time that we're in. But apart from telling us of the problems that were to come, he also told us of the solutions we could find, because he also states that the future can be changed, if we only understand the laws of the universe and we understand how to enact it. So this is who Credo-Mutwa was. He was an incredible polymath, a great teacher, greatly revered, and a great healer, seer, and prophet as well. Now, when I speak about his marginalization throughout his life, this actually began from his birth. And he was born of parents who did not get married. And, in those days, and I'm now going to read from one of his autobiographical works. He says, in those days in Zululand, there was nothing more shameful than for a girl to be pregnant with an illegitimate baby in her father's home. So while my mother carried me, she was the target of curses hurled at her by all the village girls. She became an object of shame to my grandfather's 11 wives. And everyone was disgusted with her, and it was even worse that she, the daughter of a prominent man, was about to give birth to a child fathered by a traveling Christian. His father was Christian, his mother was non-Christian. And so I continue. When I was a baby, everyone shunned me. I grew up in isolation. One day I was sick and crying, and people in the Sangoma's home yelled at my mother to shut me up because I was disturbing their cries and awakening the sleeping Zulus. And this then came into the awakener of the Zulus. And the fact that I was illegitimate followed me everywhere. Children were told not to play with me. Even when we're looking after cattle together, the other boys did not talk to me. So I was always alone. As I grew older, I began noticing unusual things about myself. The first thing I noticed that I was very good at sculpting and wood carving. Sitting alone, I carved beautiful spoons using a rusty old pocket knife. I also had strange dreams of unbelievable vividness and clarity. And right before my 7th year, I noticed that if something of major importance was to happen in my paternal grandfather's village, I first dreamt about it. I saw exactly what was going to happen and who would do what and why. This disturbed my father, so he punished me for talking about my dreams. Nevertheless, the people in our village began respecting me for the dreams, and my strange dreams reached the ears of our local chief. He called my father and said, "Your child is gifted, Mutwa. You must stop discouraging him. He is not possessed by the devil. If anyone is possessed by the devil, you are, you Christian. Never leave your child alone." And one day I became very ill. I was so sick I could hardly walk. And after a while, I couldn't walk at all. I was in constant pain, day in and day out. My uncle took me to European doctors and Christian faith healers. The doctors gave me injections, pills, and treatments of all kinds, and the Christian faith healers prayed over me, talking in tongues and dancing like baboons all around me. But I could not be healed. And then the people began to whisper that I was suffering from a healer's disease because my visions intensified when the disease came. All of a sudden, I was able to see through people. If a person had a sickness in their body, I could see it. Don't ask me how, but I could if it was as if their body had turned into a moving statue of glass and all their ailments were dark brown or dirty green blotches against the transparent body. Each time I saw people with sickness in them, I had a strange urge to crawl towards them and touch them. I just wanted to touch and take away their pain. And it goes on, into his story and how he eventually then starts initiating as a healer. So I think what Credo Mutwa would say is, I would say he would teach us about what I call the pedagogy of not the of the oppressed, but the pedagogy of the outcast, of the traitor, of the illegitimized, and of the marginalized, because this is what he was in the almost 100 years that he lived. This year he would have turned 100 years of age, and yet the marginalized, the illegitimized, the outcasts, the ones who are called traitors, the sellouts, are often the ones who bear the greatest gift of healing. So Credo Mutwa would implore us to look at marginalization. He would implore us to look at the idea or the concept of traitor. What is it that we call treachery, for lack of better words. Is the traitor somebody who's being treacherous against that which is true, or simply being treacherous against that which is the dominant and which seeks to control, like an errant elephant that kills a rat? He would implore us, if it was Credo Mutwa, to look at those that are marginalized and to look at the marginalizations. For instance, the refugees that you have spoken about, that are being finding refuge in Nigeria, and he'd look to see what are their gifts, that they are holding, and how are they able to harness the gifts, because inherent within marginalization is the impetus to harness something different, because then within that you then are required to activate certain laws of survival, or certain, things of survival that you'd not have if you're otherwise comfortable and bounded in a safe or a familiar space. He would look into the othering, because he was othered his whole life. He was always the traitor, the treacherous one, the sellout, the one who was beaten, the one who was exiled. And what did he do in exile? Whenever Credo Mutwa was kicked out in exile, without fail, he would build a village. He would try and find ways to use whatever it was around him to bring healing into that space. So he would turn the exile into a source of healing and building. He would rebuild, he would regenerate. So in what ways are we able to learn from him about regeneration and rebuilding from the ills of society? How can we compost them? Because as we've learned about the dung of an elephant, even though it seems to be waste, because an elephant actually uses less of for its own body of what it ingests, and gives out most in terms of waste, which has got so much use. How can we use the waste that is inherent in human society and human ills and turn that into medicine? So that's what, if we were to follow a Mutwa way of understanding based on his life, as that the one who's illegitimized, the one who's been marginalized, the one who's been cast out, etc., that we would use from his life. That's what we'd draw from him.
Thank you. I'm so grateful. While we were talking, I realized that I haven't read any of Credo Mutwa's books, so I just ordered almost 3 of them. Well, I just put them in my wish list. My birthday is coming up, and people are going to ask, what can I get you for your birthday? And I'll be getting all the books of, Credo Mutua that I can put my hands on. I'm just so grateful for the time that we've been here, that we've spent here together. We've been here since 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, dissecting this African proverb from Cameroon that says, an elephant which kills a rat is not a hero. And I am joined here by Gogo Rutendo Ngara, who is in South Africa. She's from Zimbabwe originally, and she's a respected leader. She's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to African spirituality. And one of the things I love that she gifts us every Thursday is grounding. And Gogo, even if it's just for 5 minutes, I would love for you to do a grounding for us as part of our ending for today's session. And I also want to invite those of us who are on Twitter Spaces. We are live streaming this on YouTube as well, by the way. My YouTube channel is Simon Javan Okelo, and you can join us there right now if you have the time. And if you do, just leave a comment so that we know that you are there, and leave a comment so that we know your perspectives on this proverb as well. And again, in about 10 to 12 minutes, we will be wrapping up our conversation today. So I invited everyone who is in the audience to join us so that you share your perspective. But after 10 minutes, we will be wrapping up our conversation today completely. Gogo Rutendo, I just wanted to share that, similar to Credo Mutua, I feel that a lot of African legends, Credo is an African legend, is an unsung hero. From you and a few there's another brother who is an author, and he's writing a lot of books about the true story of Egypt, and that's where I learned about hero. You say Hereru. There's a Heru, and I wanted you to just speak about that, because I'm saying that Credo Mutua is a hero, and there are many other African heroes whose work should be discussed like we do with Credo Mutua's work every week. And I feel like some of our ancestors are very sad because they did so much work, and we are not even talking about it. We are busy, learning a lot of information that was prepared by our colonizers. We are busy earning degrees that will help continue to perpetuate systems that were built to keep us where we are, while education that was provided by people that were jailed, people that stayed poor and suffered throughout their life, in order for them to create information, in order for them to create content and artwork and sculptures that we would hopefully take time and study and understand. Like when you're describing the artwork or the painting that was done in Soweto by Credo Mutua in the 70s that predicted the 9/11 terror attack, you find that many of us don't even have the time to visit such places. We want to visit Dubai, we want to visit places that have nothing to do with preserving our heritage, And so I just wanted you to share with us, just in brief, in closing, why it's important that we continue nourishing this space that we've been building together, and then close us out with a grounding. And really, I want to thank you, and also thank all our subscribers for our YouTube channel, and everybody in the room who supports this space. Mala, thank you so much. Joseph Kafunda, thank you. And Arao, thank you very much for joining us. And I see Dr. No Days Off is here as well, and also Mahatma Odongo. We host this room typically on Clubhouse. And since last week, we are hosting it here on Twitter Spaces. It's the only, social audio event that I am hosting on Twitter Spaces. And that's because what Gogo Rutendo Ngara shares with us is so priceless that we need to bring it to a larger space. And so I want you all to help me spread the word. Every Thursday, 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we will have this same conversation, and we will go to a different part of the continent, get the proverb, dissect it, unpack it, and learn and gain some African wisdom by the end of the conversation. So now I'll pass you the microphone, Gogo Rutendo.
Thank you so much, Simon. I mean, you ask why it's important to nurture, spaces such as this. And for 500 years or more, as Africans, our ancestors, our forebears, have been subjected to a great forgetting of who, what, why, where we are. We have disconnected and we have misaligned. And yet what we're finding now is that there's the resurgence of these great ancestors who are saying that, okay, we've given space to the forgetting, but according to the laws of the universe, if there's a forgetting, there must also be a remembering. And so spaces such as these are giving credence to the remembering. And through the remembering, we're able to once again build ourselves into, when we look into the history and the her story and the our story of Africa, we know that it was an incredible story to tell. And it was a story that is the foundation for all civilization as we have it today. So how do we transform the great forgetting into the great remembering? And this, I believe, is nurtured in spaces such as this. And so with that, I'll just bring in an invocation. And I'll just invite us all just to close our eyes if we can, to ground our feet if we can, to ensure that our shoulders are not hunched, and just to take, 5 minutes to release and to call in the great remembering. We call in the all-pervasive spirit of Africa, the origin, the cradle of humanity, the cradle of life. We call in generations of ancient ones, the forebears who sit in circle, who call within us, who surround us, who ignite us, who empower us. We call in all ancestors from the 7 directions, those from the east, those from the west. We call in those from the north, those from the south, those from above, from below, and from the center. We call in all the great ones of Sankofa, those of the ancient past, those who are birthing an ancient future, and those who live now at the confluence of time and timelessness. We call in the great mothers, the nurturers, the creators. We call in the great fathers, the holders, the protectors. We call in the great warriors who exist in feminine and masculine form. We call in the flowing spirits of the moon and the water. We call in the still spirits of the earth and the mountains. We call in the fiery spirits of the suns, the cleansing spirits of the air and the wind. We call in the spirits of nature. We call in the eagle, the falcon, the hawk who sees it all. We call in the lion heart who reveres it all. We call in the elephantine matriarch who remembers it all. We call in the wisdom of the Nile River, the nourisher of great civilizations, the bringer of Ma'at, she who tracks first time. We call in the obscurity of the Niger River, who takes not the most efficient route to the ocean, but the long, winding, accommodating route, the effective route. We call in the power of the Congo River, who brings deepest healing from the deepest wounds of Africa. We call in the meanderings of the Zambezi, the mighty curtain of water in Musiwa Tunya, the waters of life from the great dryings of Mahadi Khadi. We call in the Sinku River, the Kharip or the Orange River, who carries the wisdoms of our ancient Batwa, the Barwa, our First Nations people, our common ancestors. We call in the ancient wisdoms from within. We call in the activisms from without, and we call in the visionaries that are yet to come. We call in the whisperers of Ntu, those who plant seeds, collective seeds of consciousness, those who raise Bantu, Hantu, Kintu, Kuntu into an interwoven web of connectedness. We call in the great leaders of the continent. We call in those whose tracks have long left, those whose paths are yet to form, and those who fought for collective freedoms, those who free the struggle that is yet to come. We call in Pan-Africa. We call in Trans-Africa. We call in Cis-Africa. We call in Heru, as we call in the great baobab, the great tree of life. We call in life. Ashe.
Ashe, Ashe, we call in life. Thank you. Thank you so much, Guru Tendongara. This has been amazing. I am grateful. I am truly grateful, and I'm also grateful to everyone who stayed with us for the whole hour. It's exactly 1 hour since we began our conversation. And today, today is the 9th of December. And Guru Tendongara, I know that you are supposed to go, but does 9 have any significance in African spirituality that you want to speak to? I see your smile.
Well, I mean, there are a number of ways of looking at the sacred number. If we go back to Kemetic spirituality, because we spoke about Heru, and Heru sits on the tree of life as the center of the tree of life, and that tree of life is made up of 3 trinities, so 3 times 3, which is 9. And the deity or the archetype who sits in the 9th sphere is Oset. She's the matriarch. She's the elephant. She's the one who births, all of life. She's the one who nurtures all and holds all. But she's also the one who's responsible for memory and remembering. So when we are in this number 9, we're remembering the 3 times 3. We remember the 3 squared, but we're also remembering the Great Mother. We're remembering the elephant, and we're remembering that we remember. So we're invoking the great remembering, knowing that this great remembering is what happens when we then reach to the next number after 9, which is 10, which brings us back to 1, back to the beginning.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And to everyone who is on Twitter Spaces with us, please send me a DM. That's a direct message if you want to be involved with helping promote these Thursday sessions with Guru Tendongara here on Twitter Spaces. And to everybody who has been watching on YouTube and those who will be watching later, thank you. Dr. No Days Off, thank you again for your continued support. You have the most comments on my YouTube channel, and I think I need to come up with an award ceremony for people who are supporting this space, because truly it means a lot. I know that we have a number of guests who just joined us. This is the Daily African Proverbs. This is a daily gathering of people who love African proverbs, and our hope is that after the 1 hour session, we each leave our conversation with some African wisdom. And since January, we've been hosting this conversation on Clubhouse, and recently we started live streaming it on YouTube. And then last week we began broadcasting on Twitter Spaces every Thursday with our special guest Guru Tendongara, who is joining us from South Africa. And so thank you again, and spread the word. We'll be here again next Thursday, but tomorrow we will be on Clubhouse at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And Saturday and Sunday we don't do the Daily African Proverbs, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday we also do it on Clubhouse as well as YouTube. And if you want to learn more, there are links at the top of the room, or you can just follow me on Twitter. I normally post the proverb of the day about 3 hours before we go live on all the platforms that I just mentioned. I am really, really grateful, and have a beautiful day. Take great care of yourselves. Thank you.
African father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. African father, America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze.